Yeah, there we go. Getting back into the swing of things. Okay. So beginning last week, we are in the midst of Jesus' farewell discourse, his last goodbye to his disciples on the eve of his death. So this is the last bit of instruction that he's going to give them. And last week Jesus said that we are the branches on the vine, that Jesus is the vine. We should abide in him, meaning have a relationship with him. And if we don't have that relationship, we will wither and die. But if we do, we will bear much fruit. And we can choose to detach ourselves from the vine, but God never chooses to let us go. God chooses us in love, and we have to accept that love. It's a two-way street, and that's the gist of it anyway. So the first part about abiding in God and God abiding in us is gathering strength from the vine so that we can bear fruit. But what is that fruit? As we hear today, it is love. And to bear fruit, we need to do one thing: follow Jesus' commandments. He says here the plural commandments, but there really is only one given here. That is, that you love one another as I have loved you. In order to be in a right relationship with God, we need to love one another. And then if we do that, more love will come into the world. And then we will have Jesus' joy in us. If we just follow the so-called rules of church that humans made up themselves, without the love part, it's kind of a futile endeavor. Jesus models love for us in many different ways. In the Gospel of John, he shows love for us in the foot washing of his disciples, in the acceptance of the outsider, even in the love for Judas, the one that's going to betray him, because he knew that that was going to happen, but he still loved him. And then ultimately, love is shown in Jesus' death, but the big one is love in the incarnation of the Word in Jesus. That's the big act of love in the Gospel of John. Love is the key, and it gives us a purpose in life, which is to be that incarnation of Jesus now, and to make our corner of the world a better place. And the byproduct of that is true joy. But what is joy, right? Is it the same thing as happiness? Now, the Declaration of Independence says that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And many people take this as a challenge. I'm going to pursue that happiness, right? Happiness is something that we tend to chase, that we seek out. But how do we even know if we have it or not? Humans tend to be pretty bad at predicting what's going to make us happy, right? If I had that better job or that better apartment, better partner or an iPhone X or whatever thing, I'm going to be so happy. Well, David Lowes writes, quote, "Rather, perhaps happiness is the byproduct of worthy activities. Perhaps happiness is the feeling you get from a job well done, or from achieving a goal, or from being honest and trustworthy, or from helping someone out. In this sense, happiness is less a commodity to be pursued and possessed than it is a byproduct of noble efforts, or simply a gift to be received." End quote. I think this is what Jesus is getting at today. If we keep the commandment to love, then we will get more love. And then in return, we will have true joy. And it's good to note that in ancient Greek, the root word for joy and grace is the same. So we know that God's grace is given freely to us. So joy can also be given to us. Perhaps then joy is the feeling of God's grace upon us. That indescribable feeling of abundant love that only God can provide. Sometimes we feel it very easily, but more often it is hard to find joy in life, especially when the world is in turmoil, as it perpetually is. But remember that Jesus speaks these words about joy on the eve of his own death. He knows that soon the disciples are going to be crushed and scattered and confused and hunted down and experience a total lack of joy. And Jesus knows that these words of joy need to be heard when you're going to be facing joyless times. I mean, Jesus isn't saying never feel sad. That's ridiculous and impossible, really, right? You can't be happy all the time. That's not how life is. We do have sad times, and we will. It's a guarantee. But the key is to continue to act in love and continue to draw strength from the vine. And eventually, the joy will come back. Maybe little by little, maybe all at once. But if we abide in our vine and each other with love, it will return. So as I said last week, God never cuts us from the vine. That's us. That's human life. That's the world. We get disconnected and we get hurt by life, or we just get pulled in so many different directions that you can't help but get detached. And it's much easier to hate than to love. It's much easier to hold a grudge than to hammer it out. It's easier to cut yourself off from someone that you had a fight with than maybe trying to reach across that divide and get to a common ground. Because that takes a lot of effort and guts, and it's risky. Reaching out to other people in love is difficult. And you run the risk of getting hurt even more. But Jesus never said it was easy to follow him. He actually often said quite the opposite. To choose to follow Jesus is a commitment to love and to hard work. But out of that work and love comes joy. So a lot of people say that they have chosen Jesus, like that song, I've decided to follow Jesus. You guys know that one, right? I won't sing it for you. And that's true. But before that happens, before we choose to follow Jesus, God chooses us. As it says in the text today, you did not choose me, but I chose you. We remember that. God chooses us and calls us by name and invites us into a life of love and joy. Isn't that a wonderful thought? If God chooses us to spread love in the world, and we choose to do it. But in the end, we can't fix the whole world. That's impossible. That's up to God. And that's not what we're here for. God chose us to work and live and love and spread love and make our section of the world a better place to live. That's the main goal. We need to follow Jesus' command to love. Then we will get more love in return and more joy than we can possibly contain or have achieved on our own. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.